Should I? Nope, read that again? Nope, we're good. Okay. All right, so we're going to jump right into it.
Welcome, Gabrielle. We're so happy to have you here. We're very curious to start off with, how does the gut microbiome, gut health impact the rest of the body? Just curious to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm glad to talk with you ladies today, and hopefully it can shed some light on some things for the audience. And yeah, I think when we think about gut health, I mean, we think about digestion, we think about absorbing nutrients, eliminating waste, maintaining balance. That's what a healthy gut is going to entail, but it's so much even more than that, because of how a healthy gut really impacts overall function, immunity, skin health, mood, energy. So it's all very interconnected. And if your gut is not well, it's hard to really be well, right? So yeah, helping people kind of understand all of that, that really we are, made of all the things that we consume and are not able to get rid of.
I've been listening lately, Gabrielle, that they say that the gut is our second brain. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a bilateral communication going on at all times. We're learning so much more about how they influence one another. And I think that's really encouraging, because we have you know, um, such a mental health, we have so many mental health concerns these days. And so if we can learn more about what we can do for our gut, how that can impact our mood and our function of our brain, I just think that's going to be really great for a lot of people. But yeah, there's a constant communication, back and forth. You can't really remove one from the other.
So how does someone know if our gut is not well? What are some signs that people might be able to pay attention to?
So, some of the obvious things like digestive symptoms like bloating, constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux or heartburn. But what's also really interesting is how, we can not have those kinds of digestive symptoms and the gut can be in a disarray or need some improvement. And we might be manifesting it through fatigue or through skin problems like acne or psoriasis or eczema. And then again, mood, there's a lot of there's a lot of evidence about how a imbalanced gut microbiome or an unhealthy gut microbiome can play into things like anxiety and depression and those kinds of things. So also our hormones are very much involved there as well. And so it's really fascinating that that there's so many connections like that, and people wouldn't really even kind of put two and two together. But
That
yeah.
is fascinating. It sounds like, we're so intertwined with all the things that we do, and so many things impact our gut. So how does gut inflammation develop, and what steps can be taken to reduce that inflammation?
Yeah. It can be a chronic thing. And it's things like ultra processed foods, right? Because there's a lot of there's a lot of junk in a lot of food out there,
Lots of
unfortunately.
hidden ingredients, yes.
Yeah, especially in our country, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, alcohol, sugar, like you said, other hidden ingredients and chemicals and things like that. Also, exposure to antibiotics, antibacterial elements, things like NSAIDs like ibuprofen, Advil. Those can really disrupt the gut lining. Things like antacids and proton pump inhibitors that people are taking, for way too long and far too often. So, environmental toxins and exposures, and then also, stress. And so all of those things are stressors on the body, but then other ways that we think about stress, like relationship, traffic, state of the world, jobs, all
Sure.
of these things really impact the gut and can cause it to be inflamed.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And then what are some steps that we can take to reduce that inflammation?
So, minimizing those exposures
Mhm.
to those things that we just talked about, and then nourishing the body with things that are going to help to tamp down that inflammation. So, anti-inflammatory foods and supplements, um, and then plant foods, right? Plants are super important. Having a variety of fibers and prebiotics and probiotics and things like fermented food. All of those things can really be helpful. I'm gonna turn on my camera because it only is recording for a short time and then it's turning off. Okay. Oh, well, crap. I don't have any more space. Okay, that's all right.
Okay, Gabrielle, what are the top gut healing foods everyone should be eating?
Yeah, so some of those things I talked about, I think a variety of plants is really important because they offer different kinds of fiber, insoluble, soluble fibers, prebiotics. Fermented foods are amazing because they have live culture and bacteria in them, as well as the fibers. If you're eating things like sauerkraut or kimchi or those kinds of things. Um, Bone broth can be very healing because of the amino acids and the collagen and the gelatin that's in that. Protein too is very reparative. Um, so yeah, things like that. And then, again, minimizing the things that are gonna break the gut down.
Talk a little bit about pre and probiotics. I'm curious to know what are the difference between the two.
Yeah, so probiotics are the friendly gut bacteria. I like to call them our gut buddies. And we want to have, a wide array of different families present. And then prebiotics are the foods that feed the probiotics. Um, and then there's postbiotics as well, which are what the probiotics make. And so yeah, so having a good variety of different kinds of prebiotic foods. So things like artichoke and leeks and asparagus and jicama, and there's a plethora there. If we have enough of those things in our diet, then we can really feed the good guys and kind of crowd out the ones that we don't want. It's all about a good balance in there.
Mhm.
Yes, it's always about the balance.
Yes, life in general, right?
We try.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You also mentioned supplements. Can you walk us through what type of supplements you would recommend to individuals who are having some gut challenges?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everybody is a unique individual, and so what works for one person doesn't always work for everyone. But in general, some things that I think about would be like digestive bitters, to help get digestion going. Things like aloe vera, L-glutamine can be very helpful. Zinc carnosine, quercetin. There's a probiotics, right? Prebiotics. There's a lot of different things that we can use just depending on what that person is experiencing.
So what are the most common gut issues that you see in your practice? Because we hear a lot about IBS, IBS here, IBS there. Everyone has IBS.
Leaky gut.
Or yeah, but what I mean, I personally feel like IBS is not it's a little bit over diagnosed in a sense. And does people like do we really know what that means?
No, IBS, I feel like is like a trash can diagnosis. It's kind of like, oh, your gut is, it's irritable bowel syndrome, right? And so everybody knows that their bowel is irritable when they're coming to somebody to see about it. And so it's like, okay, we know your gut is irritable. We don't really know why or what to do about it. It can really be an umbrella term for a lot of different symptoms, which is really frustrating, and so yes, I definitely see a lot of IBS. I see, like Deanna mentioned, leaky gut is super, super common because of all the things that contribute to it that are so prevalent in our society. But I also see things like IBD, so inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's and different kinds of colitis. I see things like gastritis, gastroparesis, so issues with the stomach. I see EOE, which is having to do with the esophagus. And I see things, related to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So a myriad of different things. Those are some of the top ones that that people come to me for, though. Oh,
Gabrielle.
SIBO is another big one, which is an acronym that stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Very interesting. And
Yeah.
Gabrielle, we know that you take a functional approach to healing the gut. And how does that differ from traditional approaches?
So I think about it more like functional medicine is kind of like the medicine of why. Whereas in conventional, traditional approaches, it's like, what is the symptom? And then what is the drug or the surgery or something that we can do to treat the symptom? But we want to know why the body lost function to begin with. And then what can we do to really restore the function? And so that's very unique, and it's very it takes a real bio-individuality approach because everybody's life is different and everybody's genetics are different and everyone's terrain, internal terrain is different. And so you gotta really take time with people to understand what's going on, to be able to offer, advice and opportunity for them to correct that dysfunction. Because I really believe that the body is always working for us, and it's just about these symptoms are really messengers to let us know that something is off or some things are off, and so that's how we actually really, make headway and really help people heal, because we're asking why, instead of just trying to suppress the symptom, but figuring out where's it coming from.
Sure, yes. I mean, we can all appreciate, and the root cause approach definitely resonates with all of us. And so if someone were to come in and they know something is going on and they would like to do some testing with you, what does that entail?
So it kind of depends again, what they're coming to me, challenged by. I often will run gut microbiome stool testing because it's very comprehensive and I can learn a lot from those results. But I also do blood work and urine testing and other things that I might be looking at You know, like what's their vitamin D level? How's their liver and kidney, you know, functioning? What's their thyroid look like? All of those things are very much involved in digestion. But then if they have other stuff going on too, I might be looking at cortisol, I might be looking at other hormones, you know, so I can do a lot of what you can find elsewhere, but then I'm doing more functional comprehensive testing as well. Also looking at like micronutrients, all right, micronutrients and macronutrients. So how is the body utilizing protein and carbohydrates and fats? What's the vitamin and mineral, you know, status? Do people have food sensitivities or food allergies? That's another big one that I'll run. Um, so yeah, it's kind of, you know, there's a lot that we could cover there. But yeah,
It sounds like you take a very custom and tailored approach to
yeah.
whatever your client's needs are, and you sort of just try to hone in and get a big scope of things and just dissect one thing at a time.
Yeah, and you know, to be honest, it's there's many people that come to me, you know, super frustrated, right? I'm kind of a lot of times, I mean, there's some of my population that is proactive, right? And they want to, you know, just optimize their health and longevity. But most of the people that come to me are people that have exhausted, you know, they've exhausted things with the traditional medical system, and they haven't got the answers that they wanted or symptom, you know, resolution. And so they really do want to do a deeper dive into what's going on inside, what's going on in their life, you know. And so and just conventional medicine doesn't offer these kinds of things. And so yes, but I definitely believe that it's really important to treat each person as a unique, you know, beautiful human that they are, and really try to understand how I can serve them.
Gabrielle, I feel like nowadays stress affects everything in our lives. But how does stress specifically affects the gut health? And I don't know, maybe you can share some simple stress reducing techniques that actually help the gut.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we can't separate the two. The nervous system is highly involved in many functions in the body, but definitely when it comes to digestion. So digestion really starts, you know, up here, really with what kind of mindset you're in, what, you know, what you're coming to the table thinking about, how quickly you're eating and consuming your food. All of those things, you know, play into how well your body is going to actually receive what you're putting in it. And so I talk to my people a lot about that. And it seems very simple, you know, like you were asking, are there some tips? Like one of the things that I talk to people about is chewing their food, you know, just again, sounds very simple, but
Guilty.
if
I
you
have to
think
say I'm
about it,
guilty
what's
here.
that?
I'm guilty about that. I don't take the time to chew my food because I'm always in a rush and
Yeah.
all of that. So I have to be mindful about that and sit down and say, okay, I'm about to eat something. I'm gonna take a deep breath and enjoy the food and eat it, not like if someone is behind me, rushing me.
Yes, yes. And you know, we have these teeth in our mouth, you know, for a reason. We don't have them anywhere else in the body. So by the time it gets past those and gets down here, you're solely reliant on the digestive, you know, juices and things that you may or may not be producing. And so we have to masticate it in our mouth. So chewing our food is a big one, really to like a pureed, you know, consistency, making sure that you've swallowed the food in your mouth before you have the next bite, you know, ready to eat, right? Uh, like you mentioned, you know, taking deep breaths. I really encourage people to take 3 to 5 deep, belly breaths, maybe even closing their eyes, right? That's going to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and digest arm of the nervous system, and kind of shifting us out of that fight or flight place that we may not even really recognize that we're in. But when we're going very quickly and we're kind of using food as like a, like a have to, or like I gotta, hurry up and get this in, versus being more intentional and really, taking time to embrace that experience. And I work with a lot of people, that have had disordered eating, or again, they've had digestive stuff for a long time. And so the relationship with food is kind of skewed, and they may be really fearful about eating in general. And so helping them to, say some affirmational statements, really try to have that gratitude for their body and its abilities, but also for the beauty of the food itself, what it can do, and and the resources to have it, and all of those things. Really literally telling yourself those things can really get your body into a place again where you can receive and get more out of your food. A lot of people are like, just going to use the example of buying organic food, let's say, right? They're spending money to try to get some nourishing, high quality food. But what they don't really recognize is if they're not being intentional and mindful at meal times like that, they're not really getting, the most bang for their buck. And so those are some things that people can do, at meal times. Really look at the colors, if say grace for your food. And if it's something, if you don't pray, just try to switch into a place of gratitude. Can be very, very helpful.
An important thing to talk about. I think, we've talked about it from an exercise standpoint, that when we go to exercise, we think about how grateful we are that our body is functioning, that we get to be here, that we get to exercise our body. And I've never really thought about it from a food perspective.
Yes. Yeah, it's the same, one and the same.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And just to circle back kind of on the solution side, I know you mentioned it's really all about like a balanced approach and about different foods that we can have. My question for you is, what if you have a client that doesn't really like any of these foods, that really likes to stay more kind of plain? Or maybe let's even be more specific. What about kids who have a hard time in kind of getting more of that variety? What would you suggest kind of are some minimal things that those individuals should be trying to at least have on their plate, or at least on a weekly basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's about conversation. I think many people, again, are so unique. And so trying to understand why and how they came to that place, right? Where they might only like a handful of foods, or they only, like plainer foods, or whatever the situation is. Having them speak for themselves about why that's the case, because it's going to be different, for different people, different childhood experiences, different resources, their schedule, lots of things impact those choices. Skills in the kitchen, it can go on and on, right? And so it's really trying to understand what that person is feeling, and why they've made those decisions. And then once I know that information, then I can help kind of guide them in a better way, right? I don't, I'm not into pediatrics. Like, I work with 13 and up, but I don't really work with a lot of teenagers. I mean, most of my clientele is adults, but I do have a lot of parents that ask those questions about their kids, and And of course, what their kids are doing influences what they are doing, and what meals they're willing to make and all that kind of stuff. So, it's just knowing that information and trying to kind of tailor my guidance accordingly, but then encouraging them, to see the beauty in all these different foods. Like that's one of the reasons I, got into nutrition is because of the beauty, the colors, the textures, the taste, the shapes, all the stuff that's so cool about food. And just trying to tap into that with them and help them understand that. And then the side benefit is that they get healthier, when they're consuming these different kinds of plants and animals. And yeah, and like with kids, it's just, and even I think with adults too, encouraging more accountability and responsibility for nourishing themselves, right? Like, and helping them understand the connections between food and how you feel. And you can't separate those things. But I don't think a lot of people put a lot of stock into that, or they don't really understand. And so having that conversation, helps kind of illuminate that for them, to where they're more open and willing to try some other things that they haven't tried before, right? But it has to be their decision. It has to be something that they're on board with, because we've removed some of the blocks. Children, are a different breed, right? Than adults,
They
so.
are.
But I think for parents, one of the things I will encourage is taking the time, to let your children go to the grocery store with you, help pick out the foods, maybe pick a color, for the week that you can really focus on. Having them come in there and help you make the meals in whatever way that they're able to do that, whether it's washing the fruits or vegetables, or even putting stuff in the dishwasher, or tasting things as you're going along. A lot of parents will say, well, I'm not going to do that because it takes too much time, or they make a big mess, or whatever it is. But we have to remember, to try to get back to what our ancestors were doing. Like they took a lot of time when it comes to nutrition and feeding themselves. They didn't have all these luxuries, that we have now. And it's okay to rearrange your schedule, to accommodate for taking a little more time to make a meal, and sit down as a family and eat it and go to the grocery store and stuff. It's just, we're in a culture where we're, using nutrition again as like I'm blanking on the word I want to use, but it's like, it's not as important as it really should be. And we kind of, just like, okay, let's fit it in. Let's go through the drive-through and get whatever, because we need to eat something, instead of making it the experience that it was really meant for.
I think that's a beautiful message, Gabrielle. And I think, just to add on something you had mentioned is that it is really difficult to get people to change and get kids to change, to try new things. I really like the message of just establishing the connection between how good it is for our bodies. And, you eat foods that are colorful, that are, I want to say, healthy for you, and then you feel good. And there is a sense of accountability for that, even though, people get stuck in their comfort zones. I'm definitely guilty of that. And we resort to what's convenient, what's easy, and we don't necessarily, make the time to create something that's more colorful or more tasty or just more outside the box for ourselves or our kids, because we are, just always on the go. But I do like the idea of sending the message to the kids of the fact that Like if you put something healthy into your body, you're going to feel better. And
Yeah,
you're nourishing your body. And in a sense, food, I definitely believe food is medicine.
yeah.
And I think that if we can instill that into our kids at a young age, I think that they can carry that with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's again, conversation, right? And allowing for, your children to share with you what they're excited about or what they are looking forward to or where their struggles are. And then you use the food as the way to play to that. So like some, kids in sports or something, right? Like they want to do better at their sports, helping them understand having enough protein, eating fruits and vegetables, right? However you have that conversation, helps you to perform better, right? If you're struggling at school to think or pay attention, did you know that if you eat these blueberries, right, it's going to help your brain, just helping them to make that correlation. Because it's not taught, it's not taught in school, it's not taught in media, right? Like it is the parents' responsibility. Otherwise, they're not going to get that information. And then they can know how it corresponds. You know, many kids just think that the foods come from the grocery store, right? Or like they don't even understand that it came from the actual soil and the farmers that were involved and all the stuff, right? And if you're a believer, I think that it's all here for us. That's a perfect design.
Gabrielle, I have one more question for you. If
Sure.
someone could make just one or two changes today to improve their gut health, what would it be? I know there may be more than one or two, but like, what would you think is the most important one?
Wow. I mean, I think that's a great question. Like you said, it's kind of tough to narrow it down, because I do want people to understand that all their choices matter and it all adds up and can benefit them, no matter how small it seems. But I think one of the things I really want people to take away is that they got to slow down. They got to slow down, and that's one of the best ways to improve your gut health is that mindfulness, is really allowing your body to do what it knows how to do, right? By giving it the experience, of that intentionality, at mealtime. Um, I think that's very, very important. And and then just, getting as much quality whole foods as you can. And again, it all adds up, and so it doesn't, as you're building the consistency, give yourself grace and understand that it doesn't happen overnight, right? And but it all matters and it's all good.
That's great advice. Can we pause for one moment? So we're gonna wrap up, and one of us is gonna close. And I was thinking that we're gonna ask you where our listeners can find you and how they can connect with you. And maybe whoever's closing, if we can say, Gabrielle, can you tell us what your credentials are? So we can share that just on the podcast as well, because I think that would be important to mention since you have all these great credentials.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you closing?
Yes, do you want to ask her that and then I'll close with different stuff?
What are you gonna say? Where can listeners connect with you?
No, like thank you. and
Okay.
all of that.
So do you want me to say the where can listeners?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please tell our listeners where they can find you if they would like to connect with you, and also please share your credentials?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is probably one of the best places to find me, and that's my name. So it's GabrielleGrandell.com. And that's also my handle on all the social media platforms. And I'd love to connect with you there. And you can set up a discovery call on my website as well if you'd like to learn more about whether or not it's a good fit to work together. And I have a bachelor's in dietetics that I received from Texas Women's University in 2007, which seems like a long time ago. And I also am a functional medicine certified health coach. I was part of the original beta graduating class of the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, and I was adjunct faculty for them for a couple years. I'm also a certified LEAP therapist, which stands for Lifestyle Eating and Performance. And I was also one of the first national board certified health and wellness coaches in the United States.
Huge thank you to Gabrielle, our incredible guest, for sharing such valuable insights on gut health and how it truly connects to our overall well-being. If today's conversation resonated with you, or if you learned something new about how to better support your digestion through nutrition, share this episode with someone who might benefit. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, your gut is talking, so start listening. Thank you, Gabrielle.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
That was a good one. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
So much good information.